Well folks, the hashtag Free Tory movement is alive and well and continues to gain ground in the court of public opinion as it's been launched back into the headlines by Tory Lanez's legal team, who's been dropping bombshell new evidence that goes towards proving Tory's innocence. And naturally, that means Megan Thee Stallion's legal team is not going to take it laying down, and they have decided to respond by putting out a 31-page PowerPoint that they claim proves the overwhelming evidence of Tory's guilt and debunks the claims and lies that Tory's team has been making. But for anyone who's actually aware and familiar with the facts of this case, such as myself as someone who's been following it, anyone with this knowledge can look at this PowerPoint and realize that at the very least, it is full of misrepresentations that her team is making, and in several instances appears to have outright lies, where Meg's team is manipulating the truth into supporting their narrative on this case. And because this PowerPoint is really more misleading than anything, that's why I'm here today making a video about it, because I'm going to go through point by point and just fact check and debunk every claim that Meg's team is making. So be sure to watch this video all the way through to the end, because trust me, you're going to want to see these misrepresentations and outright lies that Meg's team is pushing. What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Scotty O, aka the Gen Z Attorney, and I currently work as an assistant district attorney in North Carolina, meaning I'm a criminal law guy, I'm a prosecutor in courtrooms all day, every day. And on this channel, I make videos about real life court cases to pull the curtain back and let y'all know what it's really like working in the court system. And I've been following this case really since the trial happened back in 2022, and I made a promise to bring you every juicy update that comes out. So if you want to see more content covering the Meg and Tory case, then be sure to drop a like down below to let me know to make more videos about it. And if you like this kind of content generally, then subscribe to come back for more. Last but not least, leave a comment down below and let me know, are you team Meg or are you team Tory? But enough of all that, let's jump into this PowerPoint together. Alright, so here we have the PowerPoint. I'm not really going to waste any time prefacing it. I'm just going to jump right in. You can see from the title here, it says overwhelming evidence of Mr. Peterson's guilt. People versus Daystar Peterson, it's Tory Lanez's legal name, and a clip or cutout from the verdict form where he was found guilty of assault with a semi-automatic firearm upon Megan Pete. Alright, first claim. They're claiming, and keep in mind, legal argumentation, really argumentation generally, you want to lead with your best argument. Put your best foot forward, have a good first impression, and yeah, just lead with your strongest argument. So here they're saying Daystar Peterson admitted to shooting Megan Pete. They're saying he admitted to it, he confessed to it. Yeah, that is significant. So understand why they would want to lead with this, because this is a huge piece of evidence if true. So let's find out if it's true. Peterson admitted to shooting Pete. On July 12, 2020, just hours after violently shooting Megan Pete, Daystar Peterson called Kelsey Harris from jail and admitted to shooting Pete. The following text is from the recorded jail call. Pro tip, everything you say, send to and from jail, it all gets recorded. So if you're trying to not have police hear what you're saying, then don't call people from the jail. Anyway, the quote from here says, I know Megan, probably never ever going to talk to me ever again, Lane said. But I just want you to know, bruh, I was just so fucking drunk. I ain't even know what the fuck was going on, bruh. Like, dead ass. I'd never do some shit like that. I was just so fucking drunk, N-word. I just didn't understand what the fuck was going on, bruh. Regardless, that's not going to make anything right, and that's not going to make my actions right. As you can see, from here, pop quiz class, did he say anything about a shooting? About a gun? About someone getting shot? You would think, right? From if you're only gonna include one paragraph of someone's confession, I think you'd want to include the paragraph or the excerpt where they actually admit to doing what you're saying they did. But all we're getting here is that he's just saying he's sorry, he was drunk, didn't know what was going on, and nothing. It's not gonna make anything right. Not gonna make his actions right. But nowhere in here is he confessing or admitting to shooting Meg. All he's doing here is apologizing. Well, he's definitely apologizing for something, but we have to infer what he might be apologizing for. And sure, maybe you can make an inference that he is apologizing for shooting Meg based on the other circumstances, but you can't discount Tory's explanation for this, where he said he was apologizing because, according to him, his theory of this case was that he had been sleeping with both Meg and Kelsey, who at the time were best friends with each other, and that information was revealed in the car as they were leaving the party. And that reveal of this love triangle between these two best friends led to an argument between the girls, an argument that turned physical, that he had to then go break up. And a gun was involved. He's saying it was Kelsey that had the gun, and he had to get involved to try and get the gun away from Kelsey. So that's his theory of the case, and he's, honestly, that tracks. That tracks with what he's saying here, that he's apologizing for the situation happening in the first place, since it is his fault for having slept with both of them. And it was doing that and having it be revealed, that's what led to the situation where they started fighting, and the gun got involved, and Meg ended up getting the bullet fragments in her feet. So that tracks. That theory of the case tracks with what he was saying here, because he does feel some culpability, some responsibility for the end outcome. But we have to keep in mind too that Meg's side of the case, at no point is she saying Does she ever admit that she was actually fighting Kelsey? And some of you might be looking at this and saying, well, how do I know she was fighting Kelsey? Just look at the scene of the crime when the police responded. Kelsey, when the police responded, they saw on Kelsey that she had scratch marks on her, she had clumps of hair missing, she had a strap in her bathing suit was broken, and she had a nail that had broken off and was on the ground. Now, if any of you have seen videos of females fighting, there is a lot of hair pulling and a lot of scratching. So are we really supposed to assume that just nothing had happened? Because through all of this, Meg and Kelsey have never actually acknowledged that they were fighting each other. They're only were ever pointing the finger at Tory. But with that kind of evidence, how can we not conclude that the girls were fighting, especially combined with the neighbor, Sean Kelly, who's the only independent witness who testified, who did testify to seeing two women fighting and then a third short man have to go break it up. And at some point through all this, when the flashes went off, the gunshots went off. With all that in mind, we just have to bring it back right to the roots of what they're claiming here, saying that he admitted to shooting Meg. But just read the words. At no point in here is he actually admitting to shooting Meg. He's only apologizing for the situation, which he has an explanation for. And actually, it is a quite plausible explanation, if you ask me. Okay, continuing on, saying he's still more evidence that he admitted to shooting Meg. Later that evening, July 12, 2020, Peterson texted Pete apologizing for shooting her, saying, Meg, I know you're probably never going to talk to me again, but I genuinely want you to know I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart, and I was just too drunk. Nonetheless, shit should have never happened. I can't change what did. I just feel horrible. Once again, trying to frame it, trying to spin it as, oh, look, he confessed. Here's his confession. He's admitting to shooting Meg. But just read it carefully. He's saying, Meg, not going to talk to me again, okay? Jenny wanted you to know, I'm sorry, okay? Just too drunk. Nonetheless, should have never happened. I can't change what did. He's not saying I can't change what I did. He's just saying I can't change what did happen, meaning the situation that happened. Saying he was too drunk, which certainly I would believe that everyone in the situation was drunk. They're coming away, or they're leaving a party at Kylie Jenner's house when this happened. But yeah, just saying, I want you to know I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart. This could just as easily be interpreted to be an apology for the situation generally. This is not a confession. And I've seen plenty of confessions in my practice, and trust me, I will use them till the cows come home because they are hugely helpful. And usually, when people confess, there isn't even a trial to begin with. This spin, this framing to say he's admitted to shooting her, he confessed. No, there is no confession. There is no admission to shooting her. There is only apologizing for the situation. So right out the gate, this is just incredibly misleading from Meg's legal team. And they're just asking you to basically, source, trust me, bro. Just trust me and don't look too closely at what we're posting here. But unfortunately for them, we are here and we are looking very closely at what they've said. Okay, so first main point basically has already been debunked. Tory did not admit to shooting Meg. Next point, Kelsey Harris repeatedly confirmed Peterson shot Pete. So they're saying Kelsey has corroborated and vouched for the narrative saying that Tory shot Meg. Let's see where they get this from. Harris confirmed Peterson shot Pete. Minutes after the shooting, Harris texted Pete's security guard, help, Tory shot Meg and handled me, 911. Okay, so certainly I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to say this is photoshopped or fake or whatever. I believe this is real. I believe this is a trial exhibit. It came into evidence at the trial, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that Kelsey texted Meg's bodyguard and said, "Help! Tory shot Meg and handled me, 911." What we have to ask ourselves though is how credible, how reliable is this statement? Especially compared to some of the things we're going to get into in a little bit. Well, just keep it in mind. Okay, fair enough. There's a text message from Kelsey texting Meg's bodyguard saying Tory shot Meg. Now, we can say naturally, since there's only two people who could have shot Meg, being Tory and Kelsey, it certainly makes sense that Kelsey would not be the one to say, aha, I did it. Now, why would she text Meg's bodyguard and say, I shot Meg? Does she want to get herself shot? No, absolutely not. So, of course, naturally, unless she's going to admit to doing it herself, she has to point the finger to the only other person it could be, which in this case would be Tory. But once again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's see what else they've got to say. Kelsey has just been a stand-up, great witness, has been corroborating Meg every step of the way, and it's not just he said, she said. It's a 2-on-1. Kelsey and Meg are both got the same story and going up against Tory's story. And let's just keep that in mind to see how it actually holds up. So Harris's September 14, 2022 interview with prosecutors. On September 14, 2022, Harris, in the presence of her attorney and husband, participated in a recorded interview with prosecutors and an investigator. Harris admitted to prosecutors that she witnessed Peterson shooting the gun, definitely in Miss Pete's direction, and confirmed that Peterson offered her and Pete $1 million to stay silent. Let's read this verbatim from the interview. Interesting here, they're saying this is Miss Harris' testimony at interview. Let's keep in mind this is a police interview. This is not sworn testimony. So once again, this is just a very misleading term to use here, trying to make this sound like this was sworn under oath testimony offered at trial, because I keep hinting at it. It's foreshadowing, you could say. I keep hinting at it, but we're going to get into what Kelsey did at the trial, and spoiler alert, it is not good compared to what Meg's team is offering here. But regardless, getting ahead of myself. From the interview, Ms. Harris said, "I'm short, I'm 4'11", the vehicle is kind of a little raised up higher than me, so I can't really see. I can only see her from the chest up. That's all I can see. But the way Tory was angling the gun is kind of like, it wasn't like straight. It was like, down." Investigator said it was down in her direction, Megan's direction. Kelsey says, definition in her direction, in the area, definitely in her direction. So at that point, we kind of were in shock, Okay. Once again, I will happily concede this is an excerpt from Kelsey's interview with police, and she is saying that she sees Tory with the gun and he's pointing it in Meg's direction. So we've got two examples. We've got a text message that Kelsey sent to Meg's bodyguard, and we've got an excerpt from the interview that Kelsey did with police, where she seems to be corroborating Meg's story about Tory holding the gun, pointing it in Meg's direction, and shooting it, and trying to bribe them to stay silent. Here's where the rest of the story comes in, and this is why I'm making this video, because you, good viewer, need the context. You need to hear the full story, because you're not getting it from Meg's team at all. Does anyone find it odd that Meg's team is only including excerpts from a text message from the night of and from a pre-trial police interview? Is anyone wondering why? Didn't Kelsey testify? Why aren't they using any of her quotes from the trial? Certainly, if she's saying this to police pre-trial, she would testify to the same thing at trial. Well, dear viewer, hypothetical viewer asking great questions, that is where you're wrong, because at trial, when Kelsey testified, she specifically referenced this interview she gave and said she lied in the interview, and she did so to protect herself. So she recanted everything she said in the interview, and on the stand, under oath, under the penalty of perjury, at trial, her testimony at trial was that she did not see Tory with the gun, she did not see Tory shooting the gun, and she did not remember any bribe or any attempt at a bribe happening. So what's more reliable here? Kelsey's unsworn pre-trial interview with police, or her sworn at-trial testimony that is subject to direct and subject to cross-examination? And I raised this point, and I really want to emphasize it, because you're going to see later that a big point that Meg's team is making with this entire PowerPoint is that it's pitting Tory's team, which is just using these unsworn rumors to try and stir up controversy to get their client off for free. And it's comparing those unsworn rumors, keep that phrase in mind, unsworn rumors, against the sworn testimony of Meg's side. And it's a rock solid case. It was sworn, it was under oath, and that's why you should believe Meg's side and not believe Tory's side. Yet when it comes to your star witness, that you made an entire point, your second point you're leading off with is saying that Kelsey is backing up Meg. She ran away from the questions. She actually recanted what she said in this interview. And then to the rest of the questions, she pled the Fifth Amendment, meaning that if she had given an answer, if she answered the questions that she was asked truthfully about who shot Meg, she pled the Fifth as to not incriminate herself, meaning the answer she gave could have incriminated her. What else are we supposed to make of that other than Kelsey is not only not a reliable witness, not only is not corroborating Meg's side of the story, but is actually painting herself as a prime suspect in this case? So the fact that Meg's team is trying to definitively state or use Kelsey as a piece that corroborates their side of the story, yet is conveniently leaving out, because you can see the next slide here, we're just moving on. We're not talking about Kelsey anymore. We're talking about a new point entirely. So they're trying to just brush past it, leave out Kelsey, what happened at trial with Kelsey, and instead only focus on the unsworn testimony that Kelsey offered pre-trial. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I could keep going, but we need to keep moving on, because There's a lot to this PowerPoint. Next, Tory attempted to bribe Pete and Harris immediately after the shooting. Evidence for this, Peterson tried to buy silence through bribes. Peterson begged Pete and Harris to keep quiet, offering each a bribe of $1 million. Pete's testimony at trial. Okay, so we are a little better now. We are talking about Meg's sworn testimony at the trial, where she was asked, so what is Tory saying to you? She says, I don't remember anything he was saying to me in that moment, but when we got into the car and we heard the police sirens, now he's saying, please don't say anything. I'll give y'all $1 million. I can't go to jail. I already got caught with a gun before. Don't tell on me. So, right, a little better as far as it is sworn testimony. We do have to keep in mind, though, that this is the victim of the case. This is the person who is very interested in a conviction happening and Tory going to jail. And so this is her testimony saying this is what she remembers hearing. As far as what Kelsey said, her testimony was, well, the question she was asked was, did he offer $1 million so that you wouldn't say anything about this case? Answer, he mentioned $1 million. Look at the difference in these questions, though. For Meg's question, the question, look how open-ended this question is. It just is, what is he saying? And as a prosecutor doing direct exam, that's really how you're supposed to be asking questions. Just open-ended and let your witness tell the story as they recall, as they witnessed it. So this is a normal prosecutor question, direct exam question. What is Tory saying? And she starts to say about the bribe. Compare that to the question they asked Kelsey. This is, and how leading it is. Look at this. Did he offer $1 million so that you wouldn't say anything about this case? Like, not only is it leading, it's presupposing the entire premise of the question. Look at this. It's the same as like when a politician gets asked, you know, and the famous example is, Senator, when did you stop beating your wife? Well, that question presupposes that the senator was beating his wife. So the correct way to answer this is to reject the premise. Say, I reject that premise because I was never beating my wife. Because right, if you don't reject the premise, if you just say yes or no or give an answer, you're conceding the premise that's being presupposed for you. So here they are, they're presupposing, not asking, did he offer the $1 million? They're drawing the conclusion already saying, treating it as a fact, saying, did he offer $1 million so that, because, trying to then, the actual question part of this question is, the second part is so that you wouldn't say anything about this case. So that's the real question, but that question is built on a premise that they are injecting, it's words they're putting in Kelsey's mouth about $1 million. And all she says is, he mentioned $1 million. And without anything before or after, or there's really no context whatsoever that's being offered here. It's just small snippets, small excerpts. It's really not reliable whatsoever. And there are other excerpts from the testimony where Kelsey is saying she doesn't remember hearing anything about $1 million. So it's convenient. They're gonna cherry pick the quotes she gives that support their side, but they're gonna conveniently omit the quotes that don't support their side, which for anyone who knows, there is lying by commission and there is lying by omission. And this is certainly omitting key facts that would go against your case. That is absolutely a lie by omission. So Meg's team is just lying here. All right, moving on. Megan Pete speaks out. See what they've got to say. Pete initially sought to protect Peterson. Pete told police that she stepped on glass because she wanted to de-escalate the situation and prevent the police from using force against Peterson. All right, Meg was asked at trial, did you tell them you were shot? No. What did you tell them? That I stepped on glass. Why did you say that? At this time, this is 2020, remember, at this time we were at the height of police brutality and the situation with George Floyd, and I felt like if I said that, this man just shot me, and I know they came because they had to have heard gunshots. I don't know if they're going to shoot first and ask questions later. I don't want to see anybody die. I don't want to die. I didn't feel safe. I don't feel safe in the car. I know I just got shot, but I don't feel safe with the police officers either. Okay, so certainly, once again, I'm not disputing this is an excerpt from the trial. This is not made up or anything. But here we have Meg saying that initially, on the night of and in the immediate aftermath, the story coming from Meg was not that she was shot. She was bleeding from her feet, not because she was shot, but rather because she had stepped on glass. And she was saying this initially as a way of protecting Tory. Which, yeah, if that's your belief in a situation, is that if you just come out saying, he shot me, he's got a gun, then police are definitely, they're going to treat that as the potential of deadly force. They're going to have guns drawn. At that point, the situation is about the most unpredictable it can be. And as someone who wants to avoid anyone getting shot, I can see why she did this, absolutely. So I'm not faulting Meg for this initial explanation, but also, once again, I just want you to keep this in mind, that she herself was making the initial argument, the initial explanation that it was because she was bleeding because she stepped on glass. Just keep that in mind, that this is what she was saying at the time. So Peterson's lies are what compelled her to speak out. Pete realized she could no longer remain silent when Peterson began to spread lies about the shooting. She publicly announced that her injuries were from gunshots fired by Peterson. During trial, she testified under oath that Peterson shot her. Okay, so we have a clip from her Instagram stating, two best friends, I'm assuming that's going to be effing two best friends, N-word, you shot me, you know what's what you were apologizing for. You keep putting a narrative out that me and my friend fell out about you, and that's not true. Why are you skipping over the shooting? Just admit you shot me, because she definitely ain't do it, and I ain't shoot my damn self. So, okay, keep this in mind, right, because what I say earlier, Meg and Kelsey have played very coy, if not outright denied, that they were fighting, and this entire post is exactly that. She's saying they didn't fall out. She's saying it's a lie, right? This whole slide is that he was spreading lies. And according to Meg in this post, the lie he was spreading was that they fell out about him and they were fighting each other. And that he needs to stop telling that lie and just admit that he's the one that shot her. So unless you're going to say Tory was the one that was pulling Kelsey's hair and scratching her and breaking her bathing suit and breaking her nail, which keep in mind too, by the way, Meg's like 5'11", and Kelsey, from her testimony or her interview, she said she's 4'11". So Kelsey was probably getting the snot beat out of her by Meg, just by the sheer size difference. So that would, yeah, once again, that's the only way that we can explain these injuries. But here she is denying it. So she's denying that she was ever fighting with Kelsey. Her testimony at trial. Did you see Tory firing the shots? Did you see him holding the gun? I saw him holding the gun. And when did you hear the shots? Immediately after he said, dance bitch. And did you actually see him fire the shots as well? He had the gun in his hand. He told me to dance bitch, and then I heard the shots. All right, even that by itself. Look at how weird she's explaining this. She says, I saw him holding the gun. I heard him say dance bitch. He had the gun in his hand, and then I heard shots. It's like, so did you see it or not? Because look, she was asked directly, did you actually see him fire the shots? And remember, this is also, once again, her team is representing that she testified under oath that he shot her. But just read the quote they're quoting from. She's not saying Tory shot me. She's saying he had the gun, told me to dance, and then I just heard the shots. Like, how hard is it to just say, yeah, and then I saw him shoot? But she's not saying that for some reason, and it's just very odd that, right, you know they're going to quote the most helpful part from the transcript to support their claims. Yet this is the best they can come up with, and this has happened several times already, that the best thing they can pull, the best authority they can cite to support the claims they're making are just sometimes outright, in this case, it's either a weak support or sometimes it's an outright not supporting the claim that they're making. So her testimony here, it's just weird. It's just weird, man. But all right, got to keep the overarching narrative in mind. This is saying she had to speak out. She came forward because she felt like Tory was spreading lies about her. And that brings us to our next section, which is Peterson continues promoting disproven lies. Now, once again, same with the first point, this is a strong, bold claim that they're making, that these are disproven lies that he is promoting, meaning there's something that is the fact of the matter, and it's a fact of the matter that has been debunked, disproven, just an outright lie. It'd be like someone saying the sky is green, and it's definitively proven that the sky is in fact not green, the sky is blue. Yet someone is still going out there and saying, no, but I swear, I promise the sky is still green. So these are what they're saying. These are disproven lies that he is continuing to promote. So let's see, I'm hoping to see that they've got some sort of proof or something to explain that there is a fact of the matter that is just purely false, empirically false, yet he continues to push as a lie. All right, the evolution of Peterson's lies. Peterson's story has evolved over the years. The first lie. Peterson initially claimed that Pete was never shot, but stepped on broken glass. Wait a second. Who else was also saying that Meg had stepped on broken glass? Oh, wait. It was Meg who was saying that. Oh, how interesting. So wait, are we now supposed to say that she was pushing a disproven lie? If you're going to use it against Tory, guess what? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to use it against him, then people can use it against you, and turnabout is fair play. So, all right, so saying it's a disproven lie that she stepped on the broken glass. Also, I don't know that anyone is still pushing that to this day, so we'll see if they have any evidence to support that Tory has made that claim at all since 2020 or 2021, but either way. Second lie, saying at trial, Peterson's lawyers argued that Harris, not Peterson, was the shooter. Okay, so I guess they're going to try and definitively prove that it is disproven. It is a lie to suggest that Kelsey was the shooter, when yeah, spoiler, we don't really know. We can't definitively prove one way or another who the shooter was. So, but I'm curious to see what evidence that they will be proffering to try and prove that it is a disproven lie to say that Kelsey was the shooter. And then third, Peterson claimed the LAPD lost or misplaced the firearm and bullet fragments. These actually have, the first two actually have some narrative consistency going from, all right, he was changed, all right, the claim here, his story has evolved over the years because his initial claim was that she stepped on glass, but then his story changed to say, well, it's not that she stepped on glass, it was actually that Kelsey shot her. So that actually flows logically, but then how do we get from Kelsey shot her to the LAPD lost the gun and the bullet fragments? Like, there is no logical connection between these two lies that they're saying. So I really don't know what this is doing here as the third lie in a story, in a narrative of changing stories. So I guess we'll see what they have to say about that. But get into the first lie. Okay, they're saying the first lie, Pete stepped on glass, not shot. Okay, looks like this is the surgeon, Dr. Lee Haruno. He testified that surgery was necessary to remove bullet fragments from Meg's foot. Yeah, okay. I'm not disputing that. I don't think anyone's disputing that. He did testify that there was bullet fragments in her foot. He had to remove them, and in fact, he couldn't actually remove all of them. There are still some bullet fragments that are in her feet. But my question here is, has anyone made this claim? Has anyone challenged this? Because this is their claim, that he's pushing the disproven lie that was not shot, but she stepped on broken glass. So nope. We're just looking at that. We're just moving on. We're already to the second lie. This is their only evidence to say that Tory's pushing the lie that she stepped on broken glass. They've got no evidence, no citation, no quote, no post, no statement that he's made where he was claiming that she stepped on broken glass. They're only offering the evidence that there was bullet fragments, which, yeah, no one is disputing, and no one has suggested that she stepped on glass since 2020, which, remember, by the way, Meg was also saying. That was also the story she was giving about having stepped on broken glass. So, once again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and if you're going to try and say Tory is spreading lies about her stepping on glass, you also have to concede that Meg was spreading lies about stepping on glass. So, either way, I mean, I guess now we're moving on to something that is actually a claim that Tory has been making and continues to make to this day, or at least suggest to this day, about Kelsey is the actual shooter here and not Tory. At trial, Peterson's counsel argued that Harris, not Peterson, was the shooter. It's Tory's lawyer, George Migdisian, however that's said. And in his closing argument, he said, "There is no evidence that my client intentionally shot a firearm, ladies and gentlemen. The only person who, in the record, intentionally shot a firearm was Kelsey Harris, when my client's in the back of the car and hadn't got out yet. There's no evidence he shot." He then says, "What's more newsworthy? You got shot by Kelsey, or you got shot by Tory Lanez with 12 million people following? What's more interesting? What's more important?" So, okay, this is a closing argument from a defense lawyer. Are we to conclude from this that he is just intentionally lying? Because that's the claim here. Remember that Tory and his team have been pushing disproven lies. But all this is here, this is argument. There's facts in the case. There's testimony from the case. That's all been received and admitted into evidence, and now before the jury goes back to deliberate on whether he's guilty or not guilty, it's a closing statement where you get to argue and put your own spin, your own interpretation on the facts. And based on the facts that came out at trial, there is a more than plausible argument that you can make that Kelsey was the shooter. And I'm sure we'll get into that later as to what exactly that evidence is, but to say that this is pushing a disproven lie to argue in your closing argument that Kelsey was the only one who could have shot and not Tory. I mean, what else is he supposed to say? Is he supposed to say that, yes, actually, Tory is the one who shot, and we are having this trial really for no reason because I'm here conceding to you the central issue of the case, which is that Tory did shoot and he did hit Meg. So, yeah, you can just find him guilty and we'll all go home. Like, no, of course he's not going to say that. His job is to argue the other side and argue for that he's not guilty. And that's exactly what he's doing here. So the fact they're using this as some sort of bombshell evidence to suggest that they're just pushing lies left and right, when we've seen through this PowerPoint so far, the only side that has been pushing misleading information and sometimes outright lies, I say lies by omission, it's been Meg's side. So this is just, yeah, what's the saying in the law, though, that every accusation is a confession, and they're accusing Tory's side of being misleading, and when in reality it's really a confession that they're the ones being misleading. Okay, continuing with saying that Tory was spreading the lie that Kelsey shot Meg. September 25th, 2020, Peterson admitted himself publicly that Harris did not shoot Pete. And there was a Shade Room post talking about the case. Someone commented, people saying Kelsey shot her. And Tory replied to that saying, that's not true. Wait, so if he's commenting saying that's not true, meaning Kelsey did not shoot Meg, how are we using this to argue that he's spreading lies, spreading a disproven lie, alleging that it was Kelsey that shot Meg? Remember, this entire section is saying that Tory has been continuing to push disproven lies, and this specific lie here is that Kelsey shot Meg. Yet, their evidence to say this is a comment where Tory is saying Kelsey did not shoot Meg. So their very own quotation, their very own citation here is saying the opposite of the claim that they're making. So I just don't know how these are high profile celebrity lawyers we're talking about, and they're making these kinds of mistakes. And are they just assuming that we're not going to pick up on it? That you're just going to, once again, they're just going to accept them when they say trust me, bro, and not actually look into what they're citing as evidence for their claims? It's ridiculous. This is the opposite of the claim that they're making. Okay, continuing on, Harris's DNA was not on the gun. DNA evidence shows that DNA on the gun came from a man, not a woman. And to cite this, we've got California Attorney General's opposition to Mr. Peterson's habeas corpus petition, page 16. Indeed, as the major contributor, 90% of the DNA on the firearm was known to come from a man, it could not have come from a female such as Harris. Okay, I'm glad we're getting into the forensic evidence because this is one of the stronger points of the case that weighs towards Tory's side and helps prove Tory's innocence, because what they're saying here is that Harris's DNA was not on the gun. Well, how do we know that? How can we say that if you never actually took Kelsey's DNA to test on the gun? And we know that as a fact. Her DNA was not taken and it was not tested up against the gun. Now, what they're saying here is that they didn't need to because the profile came from a man, not a woman. Once again, we're playing fast and loose with the facts here because there were two parts of the gun that had DNA profiles on it. There was one part of the gun, and I forget off the top of my head which was which, but the two parts were the magazine for the gun, the part that holds the bullets, and then the rest of the gun itself. And one of those two, it only had the one DNA profile on it, but the other one, I think it was the gun itself, was the other one, had 4 DNA profiles on it. 2 men and 2 women. So what are we talking about here? When you say Harris's DNA was not on the gun, are we talking about the gun magazine or the entire gun? Seems to be that they're talking about the magazine because they're only talking about the part of the gun that had one DNA profile and saying that DNA profile had 90% contributor had to be from a man. So, okay, fair enough. Maybe her DNA was not on the magazine if there was only one contributor, one DNA profile, and it was 90% likely to have come from a man. But what about the gun itself with its 4 DNA profiles, of which 2 were women? Combine that with the fact that gunshot residue was found on Kelsey's hand, as well as Tory's hand. How are you not testing Kelsey for her DNA to see if it was on the gun? At the very least, if you're saying Kelsey was not the shooter, there's no way Kelsey was the shooter, I imagine you'd be all over a DNA test because you'd be able to use it to exclude Kelsey as being the shooter. You could test it against the DNA on the gun and definitively prove that it is not a match and therefore exclude Kelsey as ever handling the gun. But we don't know that because they never actually ran the test. They never took her DNA. So awfully convenient here that we're only talking about half of the story when it comes to the DNA, and it's the half that only has one profile, and conveniently leaving out the other half, which is the 4 DNA profiles, of which 2 are women and 1 very easily could have been Kelsey if we had only tested it and actually proved one way or another whether it was hers. Continuing along with this point, saying Peterson's DNA could not be excluded from the gun, and he had his own DNA expert testify at trial. Both prosecution and defense DNA experts reached the same conclusion. Peterson could neither be included nor excluded as a contributor to the DNA found on the weapon. Citing here, once again, to the AG's petition to oppose habeas corpus, stating that because both the prosecution and defense experts opined that DNA testing of the firearm showed that petitioner was excluded as being the primary contributor who provided 90% of the genetic material, and that he could neither be included nor excluded as one of the minor contributors. Minor contributors here being the 4 profiles that were found on the gun itself. Under these circumstances, it is inconceivable that DNA testing could undermine the entire prosecution case and point unerringly to innocence or reduce culpability, as is required to establish a claim of actual innocence. So, a lot to break down here. They're getting into Tory's DNA and whether it was found in the gun. Notable here that, okay, when we're talking about the one from here, the magazine that had 1 profile on it that was 90% from one person, that was excluded, saying that they both opined that DNA testing on the firearm showed that petitioner, meaning Tory, his DNA was excluded as the primary contributor. So his DNA was not the DNA that was on the magazine. So that just leaves the gun itself that had the 4 DNA profiles on it. And saying here that, it could neither be included nor excluded as one of the minor contributors. Now, once again, awfully convenient that they're highlighting and underlining the nor excluded, meaning, oh, look, he couldn't be excluded. But guess what? He also couldn't be included. It was an inconclusive test, so it doesn't weigh one way or another. So the fact that you're trying to use this as some sort of rationale to back up your side, saying that, well, because he couldn't be excluded, that means, what, it has to be him? What happened to innocent until proven guilty? What happened to a prosecution having to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the elements of the case? You're saying that because he couldn't be excluded, when the same exact test is saying he also can't be included, you're saying that's evidence for you? No, that's ridiculous. And getting back into the brief itself, now keep in mind this is the state's brief, so this is the most spun in the favor of all the legal writings that were submitted to the court. This brief is going to be the one that is the most favorable to Meg's side of the case. But let's look at this closely to see what they're actually saying here. Stating that, because Tory's claim here is that there should have been additional DNA testing because that could have gone to prove his innocence in the case. Their response is that, under these circumstances, it is inconceivable that any additional DNA testing could undermine the entire prosecution case and point unerringly to innocence or reduce culpability. So they're saying they're admitting here, they're conceding that we're not saying that it wouldn't have an effect on the case. We're just saying that there's no way, it's inconceivable that it would undermine the entire prosecution and point unerringly, meaning without error, without a doubt, it would point unerringly to innocence. So they're saying that, yeah, maybe the DNA actually would help him. We're just saying it wouldn't help him enough to disprove the entire case without a shadow of a doubt. So, yeah, they are conceding the point here that the DNA testing could definitely help Tory. They just don't want it to be done because they don't think it would have changed the outcome of the case. But once again, it's just ridiculous stuff. Continuing on, though, with, once again, trying to make this a disproven lie that it was Kelsey that shot Meg, stating that the gun was found under Peterson's seat. Semi-automatic firearm was recovered directly under Peterson's seat. Weapon was still warm to touch and in slide lock position, meaning all rounds fired. So that's what this would look like. All the bullets were fired. The slide is back in a locked position like that. Spent cartridge cases from scene matched to this handgun. Gunshot residue detected on Peterson's hands. Okay. Not disputing really any of this. I have no reason to dispute where the gun was found, that it was recovered underneath the front passenger seat. All the bullets had been fired. There were spent casings on the ground. I don't dispute that there was a gun and it was shot. But that's not the question of the case, is it? The question is who had the gun and who did the shooting. And once again, another lie by omission here. How they're just so conveniently just throwing out there, and look, the gunshot residue, it was detected on Peterson's hands. Well, guess what? It was also detected on Kelsey's hands. But you're not going to include that because, God forbid, you would actually tell the full story and share with the people that are interested in this the full story with context of what happened. No. You're only going to push the evidence that supports your side and just try and hope that the people watching don't actually know the full story. But unfortunately for them, that's what I'm here for, because I do know the full story and I'm here to call them out on their BS, because this is just absolutely ridiculous. They follow this up with an excerpt from the trial. Mr. Bott, this is one of the DAs in the case, stating that right where the defendant was sitting, right where he was sitting, still warm, there was not a single piece of evidence from anybody in this trial to suggest that Kelsey was ever in the front seat of that car, ever, at any point. Why is the gun there if Kelsey's the shooter? It's right at the defendant's feet, right where you would expect it to be, because he's the one that did the shooting. So trying to make the claim here that the gun was found where Tory was sitting, therefore he's the one who must have had it. But where the gun ended is not the key question here. It's where the gun started. Who was able to get to the gun to use it and fire the shots off? Because Tory's side, let's not forget, it's that Kelsey and Meg were fighting, and then a gun got involved. In fact, Tory's side of the case now is that Kelsey was the one who had the gun, shot it up in the air 3 times, and then Tory grabbed her arm and tried to disarm her, and the gun was pointed downward at a downward angle. That's when 2 more shots went off, and those are the shots that hit Meg in the feet, which that theory actually makes a lot of sense because it explains why there'd be gunshot residue on both Tory and Kelsey's hands, and why Tory's DNA could not be excluded from the gun, but also could not be included, and why there's 2 female DNA profiles on the gun, of which we still don't know if one of those were Kelsey. Would love to know that. But here we have the prosecutor arguing that because the gun was found, which even here is unclear, was it because from this prior, they're saying it was recovered directly under Peterson's seat, but now they're saying it was recovered at his feet. So which one was it? Was it on the floorboard where his feet are, or was it actually under the seat? Because if it was under the seat, newsflash, Tory's not the only one who can reach it. Someone in the back seat can also reach under that seat and reach that area. So it's just odd to try and make that comparison. But also too, let's not forget that according to Tory's theory that he had to disarm Kelsey, that would explain how he ends up with the gun and how it ends up around him near his seat. So this argument, this explanation is consistent with Tory's theory of the case and is not consistent with Meg's. So then that takes us to the third lie, which is about the gun and bullet fragments. Honestly, I don't really care too much about this. The claim, she's saying Tory is claiming that the LAPD lost or misplaced the firearm and the bullet fragments, when the truth is that the firearm, magazine, bullet casings, and bullet fragments remain in LAPD custody. I have no doubt that this is true, that the scene of the crime, there's investigation, evidence was collected and stored in the evidence locker. If Tory is saying this, if he's continuing to make the claim that they misplaced stuff, maybe there's little things here and there that were misplaced. That is also conceivable. However, any claim that there was an intentional hiding of evidence or misplacement or whatnot, I would just have to see more evidence to support that at this point in time. Or I can get behind, because this is an affidavit from an evidence tech with the LAPD, just basically stating the process for it. So yeah, I have no reason to question any of this unless any other evidence came out that I'm missing. Okay, we finally get to the end of this, which is the rumors versus sworn testimony. And keep in mind, this is a big theme of Megan's side of the case right now, is that her side is supported by the sworn testimony, while Tory's side is only supported by these unsworn, salacious rumors. So, but as we've already established, though, this PowerPoint has already relied heavily on the unsworn testimony offered by people like Kelsey in the form of a pre-trial interview, as opposed to when she actually took the stand and actually was under oath and sworn, she decided to recant everything and admit that she was lying in her interview. But anyway, let's jump into this. Unsworn rumors being spread as fact. Bradley James, this is Kelsey's bodyguard. Bradley James, allegedly a former bodyguard of Harris, claims overhearing Harris admit to shooting the firearm. But James was not an eyewitness to the shooting. He was not present at the scene of the crime. Thank you for the bold, underline, italic, and red font. They really want us to catch that these knots right here, which we'll come back to that. But James has never provided sworn testimony or been subject to cross-examination. Half true, because he did provide a sworn affidavit stating what he's stating, that he overheard these statements that Kelsey admitted to shooting. So if you're gonna rely on your own affidavits, once again, turnabout is fair play. You can't just come out here and now say, well, you can't take anything Bradley James has to say because it's not sworn testimony. He was never been cross-examined about it. Yeah, you relied on a lot of statements that Kelsey made that were not subject to cross-exam, but I'm repeating myself at this point. All right, James has not publicly addressed these claims himself. Peterson's team merely alleges what James said, and despite being cited as a key source, James failed to appear at the press conference to support these allegations. As far as I can tell, at the time this was true, Bradley James did not appear at this press conference and say his statement. It was Tory's team that relayed the statement that he had made. But since then, my understanding is that the affidavit that James filled out has been made public, and he has gone public with his allegation himself, which is important because if this was something like he went to Tory's team in confidentiality and was like, hey, here's what I heard, and next thing you know, Tory's team is blasting it out against his wishes, yeah, what Meg's saying here would make sense. But that's not what happened. He filled out and swore to an affidavit that has now been published online. So he has gone public with his claims of saying he has overheard Kelsey admitting that she was the one that shot Meg. Yet going back to this point, really emphasizing the nots here, saying he was not an eyewitness at the shooting. Okay, yeah, fair enough, but did he ever say he was? No, he's never claimed that he witnessed it. He's just claiming he overheard Kelsey admitting to doing it. So, okay, cool. You got him there, but he never claimed that. Also, he was not present at the scene of the crime. Once again, he never claimed that. So, okay, like, cool, you got him, and I appreciate the bold, underlined, italicized red ink, but yeah, not really relevant. So congratulations, that really accomplished nothing. But also too, note that there really is no contention at all with the merit of what Bradley James has said. All they're saying is that he was allegedly a former bodyguard. There's no refutation saying that he never worked for her, or he could never have been in a position to have overheard these things. No, there's none of that. It's just saying, well, he hasn't been sworn and he hasn't testified, because congratulations, there is no trial to testify at. The trial is over with. So these criticisms of Bradley James really do not hold a lot of water from Meg's side. And more claims that sworn testimony is supporting Meg, stating that Noir King, aka Emil Holland Bridges, who was a former content moderator for a blogger named Milagro Cooper, testified under oath that Tory admitted to Cooper that Meg was shot when a gun went off during a struggle. Question: okay, so Miss Cooper told you that Mr. Peterson admitted to her that Miss Pete was shot because the gun went off after some wrestling in the car? Yes. First off, this is hearsay. This should have been objected to, saying that you're having Noir King here being asked about, okay, so Miss Cooper told you that Mr. Peterson admitted to her. It's not even just hearsay. This is hearsay within hearsay, because you're having Noir King say, Cooper told me that Tory told her. So yeah, this is double hearsay going on here. So I don't even know how this question was allowed to be asked. I think it should have been objected to for hearsay. But regardless, and even if we can make sense of it, saying Miss Cooper told you that Tory admitted to her that Meg was shot because the gun went off after some wrestling in the car. Yes. Once again, though, is this not consistent with Tory's theory of the case? Is that Meg was shot after a struggle? Once again, at no point there is no admission, there was no confession from Tory saying that I shot her. He's just saying she was shot. And based on his theory of the case, that they were fighting and a gun got involved and he had to break it up, and it was in the breakup that's when Meg got shot. Yeah, that's consistent. That's consistent with Tory's theory. That is not consistent with Meg's theory. So next up, Tory publicly claimed that Pete merely stepped on glass, directly contradicting his own private admission, a fabrication that was subsequently amplified by his social media surrogates, including Milagro Cooper. Okay, with the direct quote here being, and because of that, when Miss Cooper posted that Miss Pete was injured by stepping on glass, she knew that wasn't true. Same objections. Okay, so at least the defense is objecting this time, but looks like the objections were overruled, and or the witness answered before the objections could be ruled on, which is also not good. But witness stating, at the time, yes. But, okay, you can try all day long to try and hold it against Tory that he was saying initially that Meg had stepped on broken glass. But your girl was also saying, she was also singing the same tune. So if it's fair to hold that against Tory as lying, then that's fair to hold against Meg as lying. Okay, next up here, Peterson chose not to call a key witness at trial. And Jaquan Smith, okay, I can already tell without even reading fully into this, I'm probably going to agree with a good chunk of what's on this slide, because in my video about this case, I also criticized the decision to not call Jaquan Smith, because he was the bodyguard, he was in the car, he was the only one who would be able to actually directly testify to what happened that night in any sort of independent way. So Peterson declined to call Jaquan Smith, his bodyguard and driver, as witness, although Smith was available and present at the court. Smith spoke to judge in chambers. His declaration came only after trial, and he's never been subject to cross-examination. Yeah, I just agree. I agree with this criticism, saying that Jaquan Smith should have been called, should have given his testimony. The reason he was not called, it kind of is a little baffling. But look, it's what happened. It's what we got to live with. And Tory's lawyer statement at trial was to say, I just highlight to the court, Your Honor, and on top of that, and that's partly why we want Jaquan Smith, he was present at that location. But even without Jaquan Smith, I think Mr. Sean Kelly's testimony and the GSR, gunshot residue, on Miss Harris's handgun that was done by LAPD is sufficient evidence for third-party culpability. So some discussion here, third-party culpability, basically saying that it wasn't Tory because it was someone else, it was a third party that actually committed this crime. So he's arguing, saying they're trying to prove third-party culpability. And he's saying that, yeah, it'd be nice if we had Jaquan Smith to testify, but honestly, we really don't need him because the neighbor, Sean Kelly, his testimony about the girls fighting and Tory having to go break it up, and the gunshot residue that was on Miss Harris's handgun, at least I don't know if that's supposed to mean Kelsey's hand, because that's true as well, that gunshot residue was on her hand. They're saying that they thought that was enough. Hindsight is 20/20, because as we know now, that was not enough, and Tory was convicted, and that's why you never skip steps, you never cut corners, especially as really on either side, as a prosecutor or a defense attorney, because you could lose your case based on cutting one corner, and this is one of the corners that might have saved the case for the defense. But and look at that. Look, I'm giving credit where credit is due. I think Meg's team has been lying through their teeth pretty much throughout this entire PowerPoint. But here, they make a good point. And this was a mistake by the defense, and they are correctly calling it out. So just to be clear that I'm not a biased party in this. I try to be as fair as I can, call balls and strikes. I just believe in the truth, and I believe in justice being served. And I don't think justice was served with Tory being convicted, especially when you look at the tactics that Meg's team is resorting to with this PowerPoint and how misleading they're trying to be to defend their girl in this situation. And all right, getting right down to the end of this, we now have Sean Kelly's testimony stating that the independent witness, this is the neighbor, Sean Kelly, he is truly the only independent witness that witnessed anything. He testified, according to them, that he saw, quote, the short guy shot the girl, who then fell onto the middle of the road and was bleeding. Confirmed the shooter had his arms outstretched, fired 4 or 5 shots, and had something in his hands with the noise and the flashes. So they're saying this is coming from Sean Kelly's testimony. Let's read the actual testimony here, see if it actually supports their claim. Question: do you recall telling the DA investigator that after the short guy shot the girl fell onto the middle of the road and you could see she was bleeding? Yeah, she was bleeding. Wait. His answer, the A is for answer for Sean Kelly, saying, yeah, she was bleeding. But short guy shot the girl, he didn't say that. The prosecutor said that. The prosecutor asked him, once again, in one of these leading questions, one of these presupposing questions, where the premise is in the question already, saying that after the short guy shot the girl. And also, too, look, we're looking at this through, do you recall telling the DA investigator? Meaning, the answers he's been giving them are not answers they want to hear, or at least they're not answers that are consistent with what he told them during the interview, which is why they're now asking him, do you recall telling our investigator this, that, and the third? So he's already not giving them the answers they want at trial. And so the fact that they're using him here as like, he's a great witness, he supports our side. And look, they even put it in quotation marks saying, the independent witness testified he saw, quote, the short guy shot the girl. He did not testify to that. The prosecutor testified to that in the form of asking the question. And so here they are trying to spin this statement as being what Sean Kelly testified to, when at the very best you can make for this argument, it's maybe something he said during a pre-trial out-of-court interview he gave with the police. He did not testify to this at trial. All he said was, she was bleeding. And we have it right here. We can see exactly what he said. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me read through the rest of his testimony, see if maybe any of these quotes that are in red here are things that he said during the trial. Question: all right, so the short guy had his arms outstretched. He fired 4 or 5 shots. Afterwards, the girl fell into the road and started bleeding. Yeah, she was crawling along, and I'm sorry, she was crawling along. This court reporter, asking for clarification, crawling and stumbling across the road. All right, now you testified earlier this morning that when the short guy was shooting at the victim, you saw an object in his hand. Is that correct? Yeah, it was obviously something in his hand with the noise and the flashes. And when that object was in his hand, were his arms outstretched? Yes. Well, shock of shocks. The quote that they are relying on is saying, quote, he confirmed the shooter, quote, fired 4 or 5 shots. Well, once again, fired 4 or 5 shots is in the question. This is the prosecutor. This is not Sean Kelly's testimony. This is the prosecutor presupposing a conclusion, offering a premise up, and trying to move past the premise to get to something else, so that when he agrees with her, it then can get spun by scumbag lawyers like this legal team into saying, oh yes, this is what he was agreeing with. He was agreeing with everything the prosecutor was saying. So yeah, the 4 or 5 shots quote, that is not him. That was prosecutor. It was something in his hand with the noise and the flashes. Let's see. He said that shooting the victim, saw an object in his hand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was obviously something in his hand with the noise and the flashes. Okay. Fair enough. This is actually an answer that Sean Kelly gave. So this last quote is actually attributable to Sean Kelly. Only note I would make on all this before we move on is that yes, while Sean Kelly may have been making these kinds of comments in the excerpts that are provided, he was also making comments that did not go in the favor of the state, which is why they had to try and get his former testimony in by asking him if he recalled prior statements that he's made, which arguably is not even admissible. As prior testimony comes in when the witness is unavailable. I guess you could be using it for impeachment purposes, but then you'd have to be treating the witness as hostile, and we're getting into the legal weeds with all that. Regardless, we have his testimony, and certainly, okay, if you want to clip some of this, cherry pick some of his quotes, it does help the state. But he also, a lot of his quotes, a lot of his testimony helped Tory's side, specifically in saying that it was girls that were fighting, And the first flashes, the first gunshots occurred before Tory got into the fight. That is it. It's something he testified to. He was clear about that. It was then after Tory got, the first flashes happened before Tory got in, and then after he got in, there was more flashes. Yeah, just awfully convenient. Once again, they're going to leave that part out of it, as well as try and misattribute the quotes, which is just, yeah, that's just scummy thing to do. Ring footage. Peterson's team has recently claimed that they have obtained ring footage that supposedly exonerates Peterson. Ring audio is not new. It was admitted into evidence at trial as a trial exhibit number 12. Just so we got it here, I'm actually going to play this live and listen to it with you good people following to see. Listen to the cadence. Listen to the cadence of the shots and how it is not exactly a spraying and praying, as the kids say.
You're listening to Street TV.
1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got a 1, 2, 3, and then a 1, 2. And this is consistent also with Tory's testimony, though, that it was Kelsey that initially shot, and she shot 3 shots up into the air. And then there was a pause as he got out and went to go wrestle the gun away, and then the 2 additional shots as he was trying to get the gun away from her. So yeah, that's his theory of the case, and that is consistent with the ring audio. And that is not consistent with Meg's theory, which is that Tory just open fired at her feet. But regardless, the ring is there. You can make up your own mind with it. It was admitted to the jury, and they did consider it before they found Tory guilty. So apparently they didn't put too much weight on it, which, you know, that's their choice to make. But we have it here, and it really, doesn't weigh too much on what we're doing, other than, honestly, in my opinion, to corroborate Tory's theory on this case. Finally, Peterson had the opportunity to testify at trial and tell his side of the story, but he did not. Now this really grinds my gears. This gets the blood boiling, because this slide is Meg's team assuming or hoping that anyone who reads this is stupid and doesn't know basic legal trial strategy. And honestly, maybe most people don't, because most people are not lawyers, but any lawyer will tell you, at least any lawyer that works in the litigation world, the trial world, will tell you it is almost never a good idea for a criminal defendant to testify in their own trial. There are so many things that can go wrong. It is about the biggest risk, the biggest gamble you could possibly take. And sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes you have to, and it does actually help your case as a defense. But way more often than not, testifying, because it opens you up to cross-exam, and that is the most dangerous territory you can be in as a defendant, because you have the right to remain silent. And in fact, when a defendant wants to testify, at least in North Carolina, the judge has to actually ask them questions first to inform them and remind them, you don't have to testify. You have a right to remain silent, and you can exercise that right and not testify, and it will not be held against you. It is common practice for a defendant to not testify. And so the fact that here they are, this is Meg's legal team, saying that he could have testified, but he did not. This is just a total perversion of the law, a perversion of the burden of proof. Because, right, what is the burden of proof in criminal court? It's innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. By saying he's guilty because he didn't testify, that is flipping it on its head, saying he's guilty until proven innocent. The court will treat him as guilty, and the burden is on him to testify to prove his innocence. And that is gross, that's sick, that's disgusting, and it is insane that Meg's team is making this argument with a straight face. As I promise you, if Meg were somehow arrested and indicted for perjury, for lying in this case, they would be jumping up and down telling her behind closed doors, you do not testify. I guarantee that. And so now the fact that they're trying to hold the fact that Tory did not testify against him, absolutely ridiculous. And really just puts a capstone on this entire presentation of how slimy Meg's lawyers have been in their manipulation, their spinning of the facts, and trying to bolster their side of this case. It's unbelievable. Which brings us finally to our last slide, unsworn rumors versus sworn testimony. The unsworn, remember, this is the theme of the case. The theme of this slide is that trust us, believe us, because we have all this sworn testimony on our side from Meg and from the surgeon and the investigator and all these great people, and it's consistent with the evidence. They've testified and they've sworn under penalty of perjury to tell the truth, as opposed to the unsworn rumors from Tory, from Milagro Cooper, the blogger, and from Kelsey's bodyguard. These are all unsworn and therefore inconsistent with the evidence. They never testified and did not swear under penalty of perjury to tell the truth. And concluding, the jury unanimously found Peterson guilty based on the facts, not unsubstantiated claims. Well, I would just point out not one, but two little things I would like you to be aware of, dear viewer. Are there any names on this side of the sworn testimony that appear to be missing? That were, I don't know, maybe present earlier in this presentation, that you were making a big deal about how these people backed up your side of the case, yet when it comes to, oh, their sworn testimony being helpful, they're just conveniently left out. I don't know, maybe Kelsey Harris? Is she on there? No, because we know what happened with her sworn testimony, and it was a disaster for Meg's side, which is why they didn't use her sworn testimony, they used her unsworn testimony. But wait, I thought unsworn stuff was horrible and the worst, and it was inconsistent and not reliable and blah blah blah. Look how disingenuous this is. They're gonna rely on the unsworn stuff when it suits them, but then denounce unsworn anything when it suits them. And they know they can't put it here. They know they can't put Kelsey on this side of this little graph here, because that would not be true. Her sworn testimony was not good for them. But guess who else is missing? Sean Kelly, the neighbor, the only independent witness. Even though they just cited him like 2 slides ago as, oh yes, his testimony, he proved, he was saying definitively that he saw Tory with his arms outstretched and shooting at Meg. Even though, I debunked that pretty thoroughly, that that's not what he was saying. But let's say I'm wrong. Let's say they're right. And their use of Sean Kelly was good. Why is his name not on here? Oh, Is it because you were having him recall past statements he made? You mean the unsworn statements that he made outside of court? Oh, how curious. How curious indeed. And it just goes, it really goes to show how disingenuous this entire defense, this entire presentation is from Meg's perspective, from her legal team's perspective, because there's just no standard. There's no standard at all. It is pure double standards of rules for thee and not for me. We can rely on unsworn stuff whenever we want, but if you do it at all, if you have an affidavit from Bradley James saying that he's overheard Kelsey shot Meg, oh, well, we just need to throw it out because it's not sworn, it's inconsistent, was not under penalty of perjury. You can't consider that at all. Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, that does it. That is the end of the PowerPoint, and it could not be over soon enough. And I'm sorry this video went on so long, but just every new slide just contained so many things to debunk and disprove, so many lies to just expose as being lies. And I felt if I didn't go through it thoroughly, I would not be doing a service to you as my dear viewers who are here watching this video and have made it to this point because you care about this case and you care about the truth of this case. So if you did make it this far, thank you so much for getting here. Very much appreciative for people that also care about being honest and being truthful and not being as slimy as Meg's team is being here. And at this point, all I can ask is that you drop a like on the video to let me know to make more content on this case. And if you like this kind of content too and you're not subscribed already, then I would hope at this point you've stuck around long enough. Just go ahead, just hit that subscribe button. We're a big happy family here, and I'm sure you're going to want to watch all of the updates I have coming out soon on Meg's case. Most importantly, drop some comments down below. Let me know what y'all think about this case. What do you think about Meg's defense here? And of course, the big question always, are you Team Meg or are you Team Tory? Let me know down below. I love chatting with y'all. It's probably my favorite thing to do on this channel. But that just about does it for me, so I'm going to wrap it up there, and I will look forward to seeing you all on the next one.